Hello, my name is Brendan Lava and I've been teaching philosophy for over 30 years. So I just want to share a few things that I think I've learned over those years that I hope will help you to learn philosophy more effectively and also enjoy it more, because in the end it is supposed to be fun. Okay, so the things I'm going to talk about, there'll be something about the purpose of education, what we're trying to do. And this is important because I think some of the time staff and students are kind of at cross purposes. We aren't always trying to achieve quite the same things, and we should be clear with each other about what our interests are. The next film will be about the practicalities, some of the practical things you can do to make your study more effective. And finally, there'll be a little film about the mental attitudes that will help you to be more effective as a student and also enjoy your studies more. So, first thing, a distinction between training and education. I think the basis of this is that training is where you're learning the rules, right? Somebody else has written out some rules or some procedure. Could be for anything, how to use a telephone system, what your disciplinary procedures are for in some organization, whatever it is, somebody else has written the rules, and training is where you find out what those rules are and you get drilled in the correct application of those rules. Education is about making you into the kind of person who's able to decide what the rules ought to be, making you the kind of person who can be in on the conversation about what the rules are trying to achieve and how they might go wrong and how exact they are and so on and so forth, right? So distinction between training and education is important. Education is about developing a kind of inquiring mind and a kind of breadth of understanding so that you can react to new circumstances, whereas if you've just been trained in following rules, then new circumstances will throw you, and also moral dilemmas will throw you. One way to think about this is to think about sex. Here is an invitation to think briefly about sex. Imagine if you're a parent and your, what should we say, 11-year-old child comes home from school and says, we've been doing sex education. Think, well, good. Children should learn about that part of life. They should learn what they need to know to make good decisions that are good for themselves and for other people. Case 2, a child of the same age comes home from school and says, we've been doing sex training. We've been developing our sexual skills. Right, this is a rather different proposition. Okay, so that ought to make vivid to you the difference between education and training. Okay. Education is not memorizing a load of new facts, right? So one of the things you have to do at university is learn stuff. But learning stuff is not really what it's about. It's more about the connections between the facts and the kind of judgments about the facts and what you can do both intellectually and practically with the facts that you're learning, right? That's more what we're about. One definition of education that I rather like is that it's what's left over after you've forgotten what you've read, right? The point of that is that doing all that reading and thinking and writing and discussing will make changes in you, right? You will be a slightly different person. I mean, fundamentally the same person, but you will be a bit different by the time you get to the end of your education. Even if you can't remember any of the stuff you learned, the learning of it will change you. One of the things that we hope you will remember is how to learn, right? So education, in particular higher education, is about learning how to learn. So over the course of a degree, you will find that you get lots of support early on, and as you get towards the final year, the support starts to melt away. That's not because the staff don't love you anymore or don't care about your progress. It's because we have to take the stabilizers off the bike in order to make you a cyclist, right? And we'll be there if you fall off, right? And falling off may well be an important part of the process. more formally, education really has three things. There's knowledge, there's knowledge, there's skills, and there's values. Now, the knowledge is obvious, right? And the knowledge is the bit you work at. Skills are important. Skills tend to last longer than knowledge. So if you think about the things you learned in primary school, you may not remember names of battle or dates of battles or names of kings and stuff like that, but you can still write and you can still do arithmetic because they're skills and they stick with you. But the thing I want to talk a bit about is values, because education is also about values. There's a great mathematician, great Hungarian mathematician called George Polya, who said that training people to solve problems is education of the will, right? So this is partly about education of the will. So I want to introduce you to the idea of an ethos, that every organization has a kind of ethical orientation that makes it the organization that it is, and that it won't work if people in that organization don't have that ethical organization, that ethos. So if you think about the army, what does the army value? The army values physical courage and obedient loyalty, right? That's part of the army ethos. So if you're not very brave physically, or if you have a bit of a problem with authority, maybe the military life isn't for you, right? What about the priesthood? Well, piety and giving of the self, right? Those are two things you pretty much have to do. So if you're a kind of fundamentally sarcastic sort of person, or if you're the sort of person who thinks that life is just one long competition, maybe the priesthood isn't for you. Maybe you wouldn't get on with it. What about university? Well, the ethos for university is rigorous, gleeful curiosity, right? So if a lecturer, interrupts a lecture to tell you about some fascinating thing that they've learned in their subject area recently that isn't really supposed to be part of the lecture, but they're just kind of bursting with it and need to tell somebody, and there you are, so they tell you, that's okay for a bit. That's okay, because they're being a university person. They're kind of the glee of knowing stuff, the delight in knowing things. But it's got to be rigorous, right? You can't just go around picking up factoids and things that sound as if they might be true. You've got to check stuff out. So you've got to become a kind of person who really cares about checking sources, about comparing sources with each other, about making sure that what you're saying is well judged, plausible, likely to be true. So there is a kind of ethos for university. It's rigorous, gleeful inquiry. One of the things that we hope you will get is independence. Here is a picture of some students studying for their A-levels or BTEC or similar exams. Why is this a picture of people studying for their A-levels or their other similar exams? Well, because they're all working very hard, right? The big guys who are rowing, they're the students. They're working really hard and skillfully, right? They don't just flap their oars any old how. They place the oar in the water in a precise fashion. So they deserve whatever honours they win, right? It's really impressive. It's hard work. We should respect them. But somebody else is steering, right? So that little person at the back who's doing all the shouting and has the steering ropes, that's the teacher. So school study is like this. You work really hard and you've got to put some skill in as well as hard work, but somebody else decides the direction, somebody else tells you what to do, somebody else tells you, somebody else is in charge. Point of higher education is to get to the point where you can row your own boat, right? So independence is really important. Independence from what? Well, independence from common sense. So if there's stuff that everybody around your way agrees on, right, that's called common sense, or stuff that everybody thinks now, education can free you from that. So you don't want to be a prisoner of the here and the now. You don't want to be an intellectual prisoner of the time and the place in which you live. You want to be able to consider the possibility that things that people believe at other times and other places might actually be the truth, and you might be a victim of groupthink. It's easy to say that, but much more difficult to achieve, right? We are very social animals. We very strongly lean towards going with the group. So freedom, independence from local and recent culture, but also independence from specialisms. So an educated physicist, say, doesn't have to think like a physicist all the time. An educated accountant doesn't have to think like an accountant all the time. So one of the benefits of education is freedom from your role, is to be able to step out of the role that you've been trained in and to think freely and deeply and in a kind of considered way. Okay, so that's everything I want to say about ethics, the purpose, what I think education is about. And the reason this is worth saying is that some of the things that we ask you to do at university might seem a bit odd if you think that university is just about stuffing facts into your head. Once you realise that part of the point of university is to change your values a little bit, is to make you care about rigour and also the delight of knowing stuff, then and also to make you independent, then some of the things that we ask you to do at university will start to make more sense and don't just seem like really inefficient ways of stuffing facts into your head, right? A hard drive is what you stuff facts into, and a human brain isn't a hard drive. All right, I'll be back in a minute with a bit of a talk about some practicalities.